This is 9 News with Georgie Gardner.
Good evening and welcome to Nine's Late News. Tonight's coronavirus coverage begins with breaking news out of Adelaide, where 6 Qantas baggage handlers have tested positive to COVID-19. Qantas flights in and out of Adelaide have now been cancelled. Nine's Edward Godfrey joins us from Adelaide Airport. Edward, what can you tell us? Let's go to Mike Lorrigan now at Sydney Airport. And Mike, you've spoken to Qantas passengers who were turned back mid-flight. Where are they now?
And they've been told tonight to wait until 9 p.m. to check the Qantas website for the details for the flights tomorrow. There is a flight at 10 o'clock tomorrow, a Qantas flight that's heading to Adelaide. There's also one in the afternoon at 2 o'clock, one to a Jetstar flight that's heading into Adelaide. It's not clear which one the passengers are going to be on. But as you can imagine, they were hoping to be in Adelaide tonight. There's a lot of frustrated passengers and this virus continues to wreak havoc on airlines and passengers. Georgie?
Mike Lorrigan at Sydney Airport, thank you. Backup is on its way for our doctors and nurses as they face the prospect of being inundated with coronavirus cases. The government striking a deal which will see private and public hospitals sharing facilities and staff. More than 30,000 beds will be freed up and access to vital equipment increased. More breaking news now, and 2 Australian Border Force officers have tested positive to coronavirus. The Department of Home Affairs has confirmed the infected workers are from Queensland and New South Wales. Contact tracing has been carried out to determine if other Border Force officers came into close proximity to the pair. Crucial talks will begin in just under an hour's time between Treasurer Josh Frydenberg and other finance ministers and central bankers from around the world. To political reporter Fiona Willan now in Canberra, and Fee, it's all part of a G20 hookup. One of Melbourne's busiest Kmart stores has shut down after 2 workers tested positive for coronavirus. Laura Turner is outside Chadstone Shopping Centre in the city's southeast. And Laura, there are concerns now for hundreds of shoppers. Indeed, Laura, thank you. An Australian-first coronavirus crack team has been set up to contact trace Queenslanders who've been exposed to confirmed COVID-19 cases. Paris Martin is outside State Parliament in Brisbane for us. And Paris, this tracking army has an enormous task ahead. OK, Paris, thank you. Meanwhile, coronavirus cases in Western Australia appear to be flattening, but the WA government has rushed through new laws to maintain order during the crisis. Gary Adshead is outside State Parliament in Perth. And Gary, there are new punishments to protect frontline workers.
That's right, Georgie. Our government is bringing out the big stick. It wants the courts to have the ability to jail someone who assaults a frontline officer, like an ambulance officer, a police officer, a doctor, a nurse. Jail them for 10 years if that is necessary. They want someone who threatens a frontline worker during this COVID crisis to be jailed for up to 7 years. If you remove a self-isolation GPS tracker, you can be fined $12,000 or go to jail for a year. And if you breach self-isolation or public gathering rules, you can be fined up to $5,000. So tough new measures. I should tell you just before we go though, in some developing news here, the Artania cruise ship, of which already 30 passengers have come off with COVID-19 and been hospitalised here in Western Australia. It has been ordered to leave Fremantle. It is refusing to do so. There are still 450 crew on board. This is a developing story. It'll be interesting to see how it turns out in the next 24 hours as to whether the cruise ship leaves our shores. Georgie.
Yeah, we will stay across it, Gary. Thank you very much. Overseas now, and the United States has recorded its largest number of coronavirus deaths in a single day, with more than 500 Americans losing their lives. US correspondent Amelia Adams is in Washington, D.C. And Amelia, President Trump has put economic recovery on the back burner. What's his focus now?
Well, saving lives, Georgie. The president does seem to be changing his tone on this at times as the pandemic escalates. He now says more than 1 million American lives can be saved if the country adheres to the strict social distancing guidelines. And we're going to learn a little bit more about that later today when the White House releases some data, some modelling behind its decision to shutter this country for the next 30 days. So we know things are going to get a lot worse here before they get better. And nowhere is that more evident than in New York City, where a field hospital usually reserved for war zones and natural disasters has been set up. in a famous landmark.
You are watching Nine's special coronavirus bulletin right across the country, and after the break we go live to London to get the latest on the coronavirus pandemic there. Plus, enforcing the social distancing restrictions, police send in the riot squad. As we go to air, British Prime Minister Boris Johnson is chairing a video conference call with his cabinet as the country's death toll soars past 1,400. Europe correspondent Ben Avery joins us from Downing Street, where Mr Johnson's in self-isolation. Ben, what's on the agenda? Our special coronavirus coverage continues after the break, including an important warning on the heartless scammers trying to capitalise on the crisis.
I know I'm supposed to come up with something encouraging to say right now, and it's hard to find something encouraging. It's hard to feel encouraged. We know that we're going through really tough times. Millions of people are being thrown out of their jobs. And so where do you find comfort, and how do you feel optimistic? How do you feel like you know what to do when you feel completely disempowered? And I guess the one thing that has given me some comfort is knowing that even though we're relying on governments to steer us through this, we do have power over this virus. If every single human on the planet right now today decides to make this virus homeless, to keep 1.5 meters or 2 meters away from each other, to wash our hands because that kills the virus, to make sure that there is absolutely no chance that we are going to transfer one cell of this virus to another living, breathing person, we will kill the virus. I wish you all love and kindness, and I wish you all strength.
There were wild swings on the share market today. The morning session saw it go up more than 3% before an afternoon sell-off saw the All Ords close 1.6% lower. Our dollar is up a little, right now buying about 61, nearly 62 US cents. So let's break it down with Scott Phillips from investment firm Motley Fool. Scott, good evening to you. What caused that big turnaround?
Yeah, Georgie, good evening. We had plenty of positivity to start the market day, and as you've already mentioned, shares are up over 3% at early stages. The problem was both a combination of, I think, US futures broadly being down. Now, they've reversed course since, by the way, but at that time they were down. And also just some sense the Australian market is taking a very significant, concern about, is it time to buy?
And thanks for the flattery. Of course I can remember 1987, Scott. Thank you. We'll see you tomorrow.
Thanks, Georgie.
Well, the art scene has been obliterated by the coronavirus, and now some of the industry's biggest names have used their talents to support performers who've lost their livelihoods. Australian musicians and entertainers in isolation are uniting in song, raising funds and reminding us we still live in a wonderful world.
And to those wonderful performers from an audience you can't see, our heartfelt thank you. It's exactly what our wonderful world needed today.
What a wonderful world.
Jo Hull, 9 News.
Love that. When we come back, why a mum and dad have decided to isolate themselves from their children. A Perth couple who work in healthcare have been forced to make a sacrifice to protect their family from COVID-19. The couple has sent their children to live with their grandparents, and the only contact they now have is through a window. And that wraps up our late news coverage for this Tuesday. You can keep up to date with 9news.com.au. We'll bring you the very latest developments with tomorrow's first news at 5 a.m, followed of course by the Today Show. I'm Georgie Gardner. On behalf of our late news team, good night.